I suppose that I feel like the inner critic isn't really real.
Yeah. Or
Like
it's
having it as a like I've never met a part of me that just really wants to be critical.
yeah. Yeah, it
You
doesn't
know, it's
want to
usually
be.
interject.
Yeah, it's true.
Or I've often found more often it's an interject,
It's
or
interject.
if it is a part, it's a part that's like seriously disturbed,
Yeah.
and his intention is very different, like
Yeah.
from what I've found.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what have you found?
I've found that it's like either a part that feels that because it's so disconnected, it feels like this is actually helpful. And then as soon as you show it that it's not helpful, then it usually just chills out. Um, or it's an introjected part, usually from their parents, like an introjected mom or an introjected dad, like the voice of whatever, and you have to give that back. And then there's the third part of it, which is you're even if both of those is true, you're still
Pardon me.
projecting a power and control over that critical part of yourself, whether it's an introject or not. So there's like a disowning of responsibility a lot of the time. It's like, oh yeah, it's just because I'm like really critical. Well,
Yeah,
like because you're the one being really critical, you can stop doing that, right? But then that
absolutely.
means that you have to take responsibility for yourself and where you are in the world, which isn't, the whole point, the whole thing that makes projections hard to deal with is because you have to take that responsibility that you're not actually with.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. The curiosity I have is actually for me, I've noticed it when I've ever had critical experiences. It's usually for me, it's often an interject.
yeah,
But I wonder for you, and I have a curiosity because you have more C in you in the disc model.
yeah.
If you had any more parts that were actually orientating towards that.
But for me, it's actually more parts, but it's the
Yeah.
parts never has a bad intention. You see,
Yeah, yeah,
it's like just the part being like, oh, but this is how we get good at something, and it's like,
yeah.
oh yeah,
I
but
think
do you see how this is actually making us feel, and as a result of that, this means that we don't get the thing that we want, you know? So
mm,
actually, on top of it being a part, it's usually operating at a very primitive state. So, like an ego structure. So it's actually
yeah.
normally an ego structure, like this is just how we get good. Or like this is just we want to get this thing. So that's why it's so simplistic. Because actually when it's so simplistic, it doesn't have a critical thought. It's not being critical of itself. So it's just being like, oh, this is just how we get the thing that we want. And then as soon as I show it normally that this is the thing that I that we want and this is how we get it better, then it chills out. Now also you're putting up on something really good because I just had a massive projection there. I was like, oh, but this is how it always is. And it's like, oh no, it's not. Like for other people, it'll be more introjections. For other people, it'll be more parts. Also, for other people, it will be not an ego state, but maybe a belief system instead.
Yeah.
Or maybe a thinking system. Actually, funny. Like I was just with our friend Ege, and he runs really cool self-actualization kind of thing, but for software engineers, because he used to be a software engineer. Now, I think you've worked with a few software engineers. I have a couple of software engineer clients. The way that they think is very smart, but it's also kind of like in a weird way restrictive. Like it's a
Yeah.
very certain type of intelligence and smart.
Oh
So,
yeah.
so someone was so like I forgot what made me bring this thing up, but someone was basically like being a bit too logical with someone he was in a relationship with, and it didn't quite work out. So you can kind of fill in the blanks there about what that would look like. But for them, I would assume that actually their inner critic would be more of a thinking system, you know,
Right.
where
Yeah.
it's like oh, like this is actually logic, and it's just logical to be this way. And then as soon as you bring new information and new data, then that thing changes. But I think actually it would still be coming from a belief system because it reminds me of somebody who, we're honest about it. We've been on, an approaching journey, social freedom, like actually getting out there and the thing that everyone's afraid of with social anxiety and with data and working on dating and relationships is actually go up and speaking to the person that you're interested in. An
Mm.
example of this that one of my friend's clients has said is, "Oh yeah, I'll start approaching if results are guaranteed."
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And it's like, well, that's not exactly how that works, basically. But that's a belief-based system disguised as a thinking-based system. you see, because
Yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, I
absolutely.
just want like the objective data and facts, but really it's a
Mm,
belief-based thing. Like this is not going to work for me, or that I'm somehow special or I'm somehow different. Meanwhile, this guy's super
yeah,
successful from what I've heard. Um, what's your thoughts on that? I know there's a bit of a ramble.
yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting seeing, initially that for you it has been more parts, right?
Yeah.
The critic has been parts that have needed to grow up or be integrated a little bit more.
Mm,
And for me, it's tended to be more introjects.
yeah.
I thought they were parts because often it's referred to as a part thing,
Yeah. That's
and I
true.
was trying to deal with it as parts, and it just wasn't really clicking because
Yeah.
the part in quotations was really disruptive and just like holding on to the line for so long,
Yeah.
but it just needed at least to give back what had been learned, right? And then there wasn't really a part there after that,
Yeah.
you know. And it's always really interesting because I noticed that often, and you said it perfectly, like it's often quite simplistic,
Yeah.
right? It's often very like it will use the language of realism
Of
really often.
sophistication, of this is
Yeah,
just objective. Yeah.
yeah. And like put you down, you're being silly, you're being ridiculous. It's actually just this. Of course it's this.
Yeah.
And you can see that in people
Yeah.
because often people who are critical to others
Mm,
do it in that way as well,
mm,
where they've got this almost authority that they know everything and
yeah.
they have tons of certainty around that. But actually, the reason they have certainty is because they don't question it,
Yeah.
right? So actually, often, in many ways, people who have the most certainty often don't have the best perspective, right?
Yeah.
And then they put all that certainty sometimes on someone who's curious about different perspectives,
Yeah.
and it almost bulldozes that curiosity
Yeah.
because they're not playing the same game. And almost that happens internally too,
Yeah.
where especially because often we come into this from a fourth person perspective
Mm,
and we're getting more egalitarian, we're listening to everyone, we're not shutting people down,
yeah.
both externally but internally too.
Hmm.
And then suddenly you just have this critical voice that isn't playing by that rules,
Yeah.
and it just bulldozes through.
Actually, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. It's a little bit different, but how do you deal with people? We'll talk about the inner critic, obviously, but how do you deal with the outer critic, the people that are pushing your
Mm,
boundaries? Because that I think is
yeah.
actually super related. And it's
Mm,
also something that a lot of people, I haven't met anyone that I've worked with or just in general who hasn't struggled with boundaries and
yeah.
boundary setting. And especially when it's people, usually it's in their family, or if you're more agreeable, actually like you or me, who are more agreeable, it's like a skill which you have to learn. Because that killing of curiosity when someone just has full certainty, I have a full few thoughts on it, which I'll share now, which is um, the reason why they have certainty is not actually because they're more certain, but it's because it's easier to be certain in the negative than the positive.
Yeah.
It's easier to say to be certain in the no than the yes, because the yes, it opens you up, it brings more complexity. No is the end of complexity because you're shutting down a thread basically, and then that's it. Like you're containing the conversation. So it takes more courage to actually say yes, or the positive, I guess, is the symbolism would be how would I explain the positive? It's like saying, oh, but what about this? Like it's like adding new things. Like
Yeah.
you can't have as much certainty
Curiosity.
with that because it's like you're expanding rather than contracting.
Yeah.
Let me know if I'm saying that correctly or if you have some thoughts on it.
No,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking basically. Like
Yeah.
how would you deal with that?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I absolutely agree with what you were sharing. And actually, I went to a somewhat similar experience recently because I'm
Uh-huh.
back home. So I'm seeing a lot of old people. I'm back in the UK for a bit.
Yeah.
And I've got a really loving family. It, but sometimes people in the family can be a little bit more bulldozy,
Mm,
right? They have their intentions. And also, you know, I'm not going to be too specific, I'm speaking about, but we've grown up together. So sometimes
mm,
we meet at almost an earlier stage for
yeah.
them and even for me.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a moment where this person was kind of like, I want this, I need this. going full like this is out of collaboration and cooperation into
Yeah.
like I
I
need
need
this,
this.
I'm
Yeah.
taking it kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And using logic to create a reason why they should have it over
Yeah.
me, even if I had it first.
Yeah.
And I remember in that moment that I just had to access part of me that was not cooperative and collaborative and was just like, no,
Yeah.
I know you can use all the logic that you want, but it isn't actually logic. It's just reaffirming your belief that you should have it.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah.
And
And
kind of meeting that energy, not in the same way internally, but externally.
yeah.
And I think that's such a beautiful thing. I really noticed it and I was really appreciative of seeing that because it was like the difference between the early fourth person perspective and a more mature fourth person perspective
Mm.
that is able to use all the parts and use all the energy and actually go, you know what? Yeah, we're collaborative and cooperative and we're a democracy in here. And with most people, it's going to be that way. But with some people, or not even some people in some moments, it's absolutely necessary
Yeah.
to use a very uncollaborative energy,
Yeah.
right? An energy that just says no.
Yeah.
It's like
So
firm.
with that, I mean, obviously, you've been working on this for a while and you have a lot of experience with that. So that's why that was able to arise spontaneously, where you don't even have to think about it. But maybe if you want to talk to yourself, or maybe you have a few clients in mind that would struggle with this, or even talk to me,
Yeah,
it was a few years ago. Someone's really struggling with that. And there's that, we're calling it like the outer critic now, but I guess we can just replace it with the critic. Like that kind of
yeah,
critical, I need this, need, me. And then they use all this smoke and mirrors of logic and facts and data,
mm,
which
yeah,
seems so real and can be quite overwhelming if you're not, you haven't healed your insecurities, you're all working together, like you have a lot of certainty and confidence and belief in yourself, which is a result of all of this work that we're doing. Like, how would you advise them to handle that kind of situation where,
yeah,
someone close to you where you've grown up with them and there's maybe more of a tendency to play a certain role, because you just grew up with that role? Like, how would you,
yeah.
what would you say to those people?
That's a really curious question. I think there's so many different answers for the different situations. One thing that I think broke for me, or opened up a capacity for this, but still emerging in some situations would be more challenging than that, but
Mm,
certainly a lot is easier now,
yeah.
is I had to break fairness as an
Wow.
absolute system, you
Ah,
know?
okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Like in many ways before I'd taken on fairness as a principle,
Mm,
and I would have to operate in a world where I have to find fairness to get my needs met,
right.
right?
And
Like if I
fairness means
wanted
equal
something,
in this.
yeah,
Yeah.
equal, but also like I have to find fairness, equality,
Okay.
right? I'm not going to domineer because I'd been in the earlier stages domineering at times within myself and
Yeah.
within what I want in the third person perspective. And I was going
Yeah.
away from it. I don't want to be that anymore.
Yeah.
But now it was like I'm getting stuck in fairness, but not everyone's meeting me with fairness. And I
Mm,
would get angry and frustrated. And I remember something even Kim said, which really surprised me. And it was actually the first shadow group we did.
mm,
And it was like, oh yeah, you're living in a world where you think everyone should be fair, right? And I'm like,
mm,
wait, isn't that like natural? Isn't that what we should be living by? And I'm like,
mm.
oh wait, yeah. I'm trying to create what the world should be rather than what it
What it
is.
is. Yeah.
And I can have fairness in me, but then I also need to understand that there are parts within me that aren't operating that way,
Mm,
and there are people outside of me that aren't operating that way
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And being able to be okay with not being fair sometimes
Yeah.
was like such a breakthrough because then I was able to access some of those parts that are a little bit more like robust at times, where they can go no
Yeah.
and not need to get into a conversation.
There's no
Actually,
discussion
this
necessary.
isn't up for debate.
Yeah.
I didn't like if we're debating about something, that's cool. We can have a conversation. This is not one of those times.
Yeah. Because you're not
Like this is a
debating.
firm no. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not debating. And also, and for some things as well, someone might even come at you with wanting to be democratic and cooperative, but it might
Yeah.
be something for you that's simply not debatable,
Yeah. It's off the
like a
table.
principle or something
Yeah.
that's just very important to you.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine too. And that was very hard
Yeah.
to get into contact with because I felt like I'm being bad, I'm being
Yeah.
unfair. But breaking that absolute principle and allowing it to be more flexible.
Yeah.
But for most of the time, we're going to be fair, we're going to be cooperative, absolutely internally, we're going to be that way,
Mhm.
more relational. But sometimes we don't have to be that way.
That's why compassion is a unifying principle, because
Yes.
you
Yeah.
can have compassion while still being very firm and saying no and not needing to explain yourself. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to be mean. And I'm saying this for myself, like maybe to myself a couple of years ago, where I would have thought that's what it meant. That's what it meant. Like, you're just being mean or you're being
Mm.
a bad person. But it doesn't mean that at all. You can still have compassion. And sometimes you can have as much compassion as you want and the other person's still going to get upset. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm wondering
yeah,
for you, just what your journey was like, both of the, if you'd experienced the fairness, the
yeah,
compassion, and also externally, but then internally, because you told at the start you had more parts
yeah,
that were having problems here.
yeah. For me, obviously, fairness is a big thing. It'd be funny if I came on here and I was like, yeah, fairness was never really a big thing at all, right? Obviously, it's something which was a big thing for me. But there's a difference between something being a big thing for you versus there being like a big misconception about something, right?
Mm,
For me, I actually think it was about being nice,
right.
right? I was never someone who identified with like really strongly with nice guy syndrome, if you want to call it that, because it didn't manifest in that kind of a way. Because it wasn't on paper, I wasn't like the definition of that, but I struggled with a lot of the same underlying like systems that
Right.
fuel that, like the underlying mechanisms that make that happen. And it was things like, oh, but if I say no, like, am I being nice to this person? Like, I want this person. I don't
Mm,
want to make this person feel bad. Like in the Big Five personality test, it feels strange to say this. I always consistently, even when I was fighting and I was, had insecurities and I wanted to be domineering and I wanted to be in control and I had all of these on the surface aggressive tendencies, and Cameron can vouch for that, even though I don't think I was an aggressive person because he knew me from back then.
yeah.
I always consistently scored in the high 80s or low 90s in percentile for compassion. So clearly, it was a
Right.
very strong driver for me. And that just means like wanting to be considerate of other people and like really, if I saw it, if and then, towards animals and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it was much more around like being nice. But
Mm,
then the thing that broke through for me, and if you're listening to this, I think this will help, or I hope this will help, is realizing that, but this other person isn't being nice to me.
yeah.
You see, like that's not a concern for them. Or if it is a concern for them, it's not being expressed and it's not actually integrating with how they're interacting with me, you know? Like, I'm giving them so much grace, but that grace either isn't appreciated for them or they're taking it for granted or it's some other reason.
Yeah.
And and as soon as I realized that, I'm like, oh, like this is not like this is something extra I'm doing. And I can still integrate that. But at the end of the day, like if this person doesn't think that I'm nice, they're not judge, jury, and executioner. Like they're not the person that has the final say in that.
Yeah.
Like actually, before this conversation, me and Cameron just talked about where me and my friend had to say no to a couple of people, you know,
Mm,
and they weren't
yeah.
taking no for an answer. So we started off like, oh no, it's okay, like all that kind of stuff, and then we were like, no, but no, that's not going to happen. We have to do something else, basically.
Yeah.
And they got pissed off. But that before would have affected me a lot, like, oh, question me and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like, of course they were going to get annoyed because they wanted something and they didn't get it. And their
Yeah.
pretense for niceness is gone, so they don't have to be anymore. So I think it was a much more thing around being nice, like being nice or being kind. But I think nice is the other one. And to bring it back to the principle of compassion, like compassion includes yourself too. Like that's why
Mm,
it's the best thing ever to set boundaries, and why people have a misconception about like, oh, like if I just get super loving and compassionate, does that mean that I'm just gonna be like taken advantage of? How can you be taken advantage of if you unapologetically love and have compassion for yourself and want the best thing for yourself? How can you be taken advantage of? Because you will not accept your boundaries being crossed if that's your attitude towards yourself. You will
Yeah.
not accept a relationship that doesn't live up to your standards. You will not accept somebody treating you in a way which doesn't fit your values. Now, it's not exclusatory. That's the beauty of it. It isn't just about you, it's about the other person and it's about the world as a whole. But it's all of those things together. But you can't, it's not like, oh, yeah, but it's good for the other person, it's good for the world, for this. So therefore, I just have to suck it up and take it. Doesn't mean that.
Mm,
It means no, it's you first because it's coming from you. Like it has to be
yeah.
like you first, like in that hierarchy. You, the other person, the world. It's not a
Yeah.
hierarchy in terms of which is the most important. It's a hierarchy in terms of decision making. You know, you've got to check those
Yeah.
boxes. If it's not good for you first, you don't even have to check the other two. There's exceptions, obviously.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there's exceptions, like every once in a while. Like in times of like great heroisms, you have to like sacrifice your bodily like harm, like all that kind of stuff. Of course, like we're not saying all that kind of stuff, but 99% of decisions has to be filtered through you first, basically.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny how we kind of had the same mechanism, but the value was different.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
fairness versus niceness, basically.
And it seems that the interesting thing about it is it goes from almost a flat value,
Mm,
which is quite inflexible
yeah.
and rigid, to something that can actually
It's very dynamic.
be dynamic. Yeah, exactly. And be used in different ways and seen in different ways. And
Hmm.
that seems to be kind of the principle here is breaking through this I must be a certain way all the time.
Yeah,
Realizing it's just dynamic, it's changing depending on the scenario, the situation,
yeah,
depending even on your mood. And also, you don't have to be perfect within that at all.
yeah.
Like sometimes you're not
Oh,
acting with
perfectionism is
compassion.
a big thing
Yeah,
for clients, actually. Now I think about it, obviously
yeah,
for us as well, but it's almost like there's an expectation, and I'm thinking about a couple people right now that, oh, in order for me to set this boundary, it has to be right 100% of the time, you know?
mm,
Or
yes,
with
yeah,
the inner critic, oh, but if it's right one times out of 100, that means that it's still useful, you know? So
mm,
oddly, actually, an opposite of perfectionism there, you know, but it's still kind of
yeah,
like a weird mechanism. But it's almost like, oh yeah, but I have to get all my I's dotted and my T's crossed. Meanwhile, you go
yeah,
out into the world, like most people are not operating like that. There's not
no,
like that level of introspection at all. So obviously we're not saying that you can just not examine yourself at all. But really like this idea that you have to be set it in the perfect way, you have to do all your homework, you have to do this, you have to do that, when you can just set the boundary, keep things rolling, and then figure it out. Oh yeah, you know what? I actually was incorrect about that. I'm not apologizing for putting myself first at all, but we can have a discussion about that. Again, it's more dynamic.
yeah,
It's not like a flat, I just said this thing and now that's over. But it's much better
yeah,
to actually, you actually learn by doing and by putting yourself out there than not.
yeah. And also, the critic, when it arises, at least from personal experience seeing with clients, it tends to minimize what you're actually doing. In the sense, I'll give an example.
Yeah.
One part of me was relating to business, and there would be a part that was this kind of slightly younger part. It's like the part that's always driven me with business. It's been a dreamer, believer. It just like, I believe I can do this. And it's got me for me through many experiences that, you couldn't see necessarily the light through the trees where it
Mm.
was challenging, it was dark, and it just believed and actually got through.
Yeah.
And it's tremendously powerful and it's grown up through our whole time. And so this critical voice, which was actually an introject, came out. And it was always saying, but you're going to be delusional. You're going to be ridiculous. You're being silly, right? If you're like operating with some of that um, belief or dreams or just like moving forward because you feel like it's going to work out,
Mm.
right? So that's all absolute delusion. And when I gave the intro to it back, because that kind of the energy that it was coming from didn't come from me, I started to realize that, yeah, this part is a little bit like, I feel like I'm going to go for it, but it also has not been at all resisting any structural inclusions that have come from a thinking-based system. It's
Mm,
actually really open to like, oh, I really believe we can do it. What do you guys think? How do you think that way is going to work based on
yeah.
the information we've got from this course we've done, right? Like almost like allowing thinking systems to be included.
Hmm.
Oh, cool, let's do that. And it's like it's really flexible and it's including everyone, but it's just driving from a bit of belief that it's going to work out, that we can just drive forward and it's probably going to be all right. And so I started to realize, oh, actually, it was never being delusional. It was never
Yeah.
even dropping the rational. It
Yeah.
was just allowing the rational to come in within a context of it's going to work out,
Mm,
right? A bit more of a positive outlook.
yeah.
And I wasn't able to see that before because the critic was so worried about being delusional, being silly, being stupid, getting it wrong. But it was creating a very constricted view. Whereas the part was actually, to a degree, quite mature.
I feel
It
like,
was open.
yeah, I feel like that I'm afraid of being delusional is super common actually. That almost always comes up whenever I'm working with the inner critic with somebody. And
Yeah.
actually not so much with myself. Not sure what that says about me. um, I think it's because I've always had a very strong belief that I'm very like a normal person, I guess.
Mm,
Maybe I've just had
yeah.
some massive blind spot and I'm actually like a massive megalomaniac, but I guess only time will tell, when this channel eventually blows up. I just start like wearing like a pimp coat and driving a Lamborghini. Who knows? But hopefully that doesn't happen. And that being delusional, like first of all, if you're working with that, what's the positive intention? It doesn't want you to be delusional.
Yeah.
It doesn't want you to be crazy. It doesn't want you to be someone who's an egomaniac. It doesn't want you to be egotistical, right? So once you identify that, if it is a part, right, it relaxes. It's like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
seen. Like what I want is I'm seen. You know, any kind of antagonistic relationship with yourself, just like with people, is a disaster. It creates resistance. Why is resistance bad? Resistance is bad because that energy that you're using in the resistance could just be used elsewhere with creativity, with just bodily vitality. Like we haven't talked actually
Yeah.
much about on this podcast the psycho physiological differences that you feel. But it's not just
Mm,
like in the mind. It's not like suddenly you just believe in yourself more and you're more confident and suddenly like you don't feel small anymore and all this stuff is great, right? But there's actually like a big difference. Like Cameron had a thing around his
yeah.
voice, I had a thing around my voice too. Like you
Yeah.
actually start speaking louder without thinking about it and you sound more
Mm,
like yourself. What's another physiological change? You actually feel better and happier in your body, right?
yeah.
Because your belief systems determine it is a knock-on effect of how you feel somatically, right? So if you want to talk about psychophysiological things, once that inner critic is gone, like you feel much more open and released and relaxed, and everything feels smoother, basically,
Yeah. Absolutely.
which makes your
Yeah.
day-to-day experience much better. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah. It seems, I think often the critic, whether it comes up as an interject or a part, like you did a great job explaining if it's a part, it's going to relax into that. If it's
Yeah,
not, it's possibly an interject, something
yeah.
that we've learned,
That's how
right?
you can tell the difference.
Yeah. And often I found, like we said, it gets so fixated on the delusion and it sometimes equates openness with delusion.
Yeah,
So there'll be parts in you that are really open. So a possibility of something that might even be a little bit abstract or weird. And it might see that as delusion. Well, that part's not saying that, like it's not holding on to a rigid belief that that must be true.
mm,
It's just like, oh, maybe that is true, or
yeah,
maybe that's not. And sometimes these delusional parts can see the openness as delusion.
Mm,
And yet when we allow it to, if it's a part, to drop some of that rigidness and come into its positive intention,
mm,
even getting curious, what is the positive intention underneath the delusion, or
yeah.
underneath worrying about delusion? And sometimes it's something more equated to safety or humility, right? It
Yes.
depends.
Safety is a big one.
Some,
Yeah.
yeah, but even humility as well, like not
Mm,
wanting to be some kind of narcissist who's just
yeah.
like domineering
Which is
people,
a great intention.
which absolutely is a
Yeah.
wonderful intention. And so when you get down to that core and it's like, oh, actually, I can be in that safety or in that humility. And actually, probably more from that safety and humility, I can see, oh, that past is just pretty open.
Yeah.
It's open to see, and it's open to including the rational, including awareness-based systems,
Yeah.
and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
And from that openness, we can be much more flexible.
Hmm.
Whereas the delusion kind of shuts it down, believing that it's being rational and logical,
Hmm.
but it often doesn't lead to any positive results
Hmm.
and often gets in the way,
Yeah.
at least from what I've seen.
Yeah. What actually got me started on this topic was I'm working with someone who used to be a doctor, like fully qualified doctor, and now is a founder in his own business. And he has a big introjected inner critic from his dad, right? Because his dad
Mm,
was, I think, the youngest of four siblings, and his intelligence and a very certain type of intelligence, kind of like that academic intelligence, which I think encourages a bit more of criticism to begin with. And we're not saying that's bad at all because, peer-reviewed studies, like you're always having someone looking over your shoulder, like making sure everything's okay, and like, oh, is that really what you wanted to say? And also, at least in history, a big part of history is actually just taking other people's arguments and criticizing them, basically.
yeah,
Um, so that was his main way to survive. Kind of stop being bullied by his siblings and kind of standing up for himself and taking space and all that kind of thing. Um, Probably sounds very familiar for you, right? Like this kind of problem in terms of not for yourself, but maybe for clients that you've worked in.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and with this guy, he has his inner critic. He still has like a fairly strong one, just to be perfectly clear. But the work we were able to do on it is for such a long time he wanted to start his own business in hypnotherapy, actually. And it's something that he wanted to start since he started medical school. But because his dad and his parents like the status that comes with their son being a doctor, he kind of got pushed into that. And when you're living with your parents, you're 18 years old, you're just gonna be influenced a lot by your parents. There's just no two ways about it.
Yeah, of
So it's
course.
perfectly cool. And also, there's much worse paths he could have gone down. But after working through this and realizing that he didn't have to be perfect and he didn't have to live up to his parents' expectations, and that his life is his life, and someone else's criticism of it doesn't isn't important to his enjoyment of his life, he was able
Yeah.
to make the jump from quitting being a doctor and founding a business with his best friend, who was also a doctor at the same time. And now, right now, he's able to fund his lifestyle with that, basically.
Mm,
And obviously, it wasn't like a hard and fast rule. Like there was a few moments where he was really getting everything planned and all that kind of stuff. But it opened him up so much to be like, it went from a fantasy that this is actually a reality. And the big thing that came with him, because this guy is not, it wasn't like I was his first coach. He worked with coaches before, he worked with therapists before, and they were actually all treating this part like it, no, this introjected part like it was a part, basically,
mm,
right? Which goes to show like the actual blind spot that a lot of people have. That I even had at the start of at this call, where I'm like, oh, usually it is a part, and you were like, oh no, for me it's normally an introject. And what that did is it actually cemented it more. That's kind of the danger of
yeah,
this. Like there is actually a
yeah,
danger of incorrect work because that's made this part much harder to dislodge. Because when something feels like it's part of your identity, it feels harder to let it go because it feels like a part of you is actually dying. But that's a misconception. It's not a part of
yeah,
you. It's an introjected part
yeah.
of you. Because whenever here's how I was testing it. Whenever it would come up, I'd be like, what does that voice sound like? If this voice had a face, who would that face be?
Mm,
All that kind of stuff. Or if it was a person. And it doesn't always come up as like, oh, it's my dad, because a lot of the time we don't want to blame our parents,
yeah,
obviously, right? we also want to take responsibility for it. But when it comes into when it started coming up that it was like a dad-like archetype, that's how you know, okay, this is something that's come from that. And then when he would say, he would even use the words of his dad, right?
Yeah.
Can't get any more clear than that. So when something was harder to dislodge working with him, we just had to give some of the energy back.
Mm.
Like, okay, if it doesn't feel like fully because of the other people before, and I'm sure they did great work as well because he was already very well, super intelligent, very introspective, knew how to ask himself questions, like was very compatible. I'm not saying that the stuff before wasn't helpful at all. I don't want to be that person. It was great. But when it came to this specific thing, it was clear that this had just got more and more ingrained.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're working with that, you have to like be slower with yourself. You have to be
Yeah.
like, okay, what can I give back? What
Mm.
is possible? Like, I can see that this is not me, but it might not feel fully realized. Okay, but the stuff that I have realized, can I give that back? And even
Yeah.
just not a full realization has dramatically changed the trajectory of his life.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
much space the inner critic, to your point, that's how much space the inner critic can take up,
Mm.
you know? And also the outer critics. We want to bring it back to boundary setting. If you don't set
Yeah.
boundaries, those people are going to be taking up a lot of space, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
I wanted to get your thoughts on what I just said, but something just came
Yeah.
up spontaneously, which is the thing that's going to help with both of those things is to drop being as it sounds like quite hard, and in some sense it is you drop like the fact that you don't like those people. You drop the dislike of like, oh, this person's going to take up so much space. They're so selfish, all that kind of stuff. Actually, when you take out that, it becomes much easier to set boundaries, with in both
Mm.
internally and externally. I just wanted to put that
Yeah.
out there in case I forgot about what's coming up for you.
Yeah. I mean, you said, I think I'm actually really curious about the difference between introjected and parts, because
Yeah,
this is obviously a tremendous foundation in shadow work. Credits to Kim Barter for
yeah,
these types of shadow.
yeah.
And it's it can be tricky sometimes when we're doing the work. Is that my part? Is that an introject, right?
Mm,
But you came up with a beautiful example. A couple of examples coming up for me as well. I found with somatic work, whenever I ask about a color, I
mm,
found black is correlated. So we're being light with the terminology. This isn't an absolute thing.
yeah.
Black is often correlated. Like for me, it's probably been like 98%
Okay,
of
interesting.
introjects, and then other colors are often closer to parts.
Right.
The only other version that I've found is if they're talking about some kind of yellow and it's symbolized with a bile or a vomiting kind of
Mm.
queasiness, that's often
Yeah.
an interject too.
So if we look at what the colors represent, then right, because obviously colors will change across
Mm,
cultures. If it's anything kind of biley or like sickly color that's correlated, that's an
yeah.
introjection. And then with the black, it's kind of like how, at least in how we're educated, it's like death, isn't it? Or it's like something that's
It
very,
almost feels like a there's an experience, and this comes into symbolic work of
yeah.
if an object was lodged in you,
Ah,
is kind
okay.
of a,
The thing that unifies it is like it's like there's a foreign thing that needs to come out,
that, yeah,
basically.
exactly. A foreign
Yeah.
object or a bile that wants to come out.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same in symbolic work.
Mm,
Actually, if you've got something lodged in you, that's probably an introject. If you have
yeah.
something that wants to come out, or a hairball stuck in your throat, it's probably an introject. But then um, if you're doing symbolic work and there's a wool is most of the time a part.
Mm,
You know, there's
yeah.
something lodged into you, someone wants to come out, it's usually interject. And actually, I remember Kim gave me great advice. If you asked, would it like to leave? A lot of the time,
Wow.
if it's an interject, it will say yes.
Mm,
And say, where would you like to leave to? And
yeah.
it might give you a person, but it might just give you a general thing, and it will actually go.
I like that. Yeah.
Whereas if it's a part, more often it says, well, it would say, I want to stay.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are just general rules that we're kind of giving because it can be quite useful. And it is definitely distinction, but took me a little while to really get clear because sometimes you're doing the work and you've got this um, wonderful technology, but you think, is that a part? Is that an interject? And
Mm.
over the years, you get really used to it. You get a bit of a feeling even before we've got into the internal process of what's actually going on here.
Mhm.
It's definitely a tricky thing to come into.
Yeah.
And then what you were sharing about the openness that comes when we actually give that back, and in this case, giving back for critic. What also happens is we tend to recover the qualities that we might want. You could see accuracy and precision. The two qualities we might want to include within our consciousness that are quite useful. But we might be, through the introject, thinking we're accurate and specific, but we're actually operating from this kind of tight rigidity. But then when we get to the purity of accuracy and specificity, and then I find accuracy and specificity with the foundation of curiosity.
Mm.
You know, I find when we're operating from that type of openness, that's when we get to this beautiful space where all parts are included, are heard, and yet we're still orientating by checking ourselves against reality, checking ourselves against wisdom. And yet it's much more playful,
Mm.
right? Because curiosity is the drive and the flow, and is able to kind of to lead it in a
Mm.
lot of ways,
Yeah. Yeah,
you know.
exactly. I think a good thing to round off this conversation would be, we talked a bit about boundaries, but how would you deal with an outer critic, like someone who is actually the physical embodiment of an inner critic, basically, like a person? It's a bit different from someone who's like pressing on your boundaries, because that's like they're not necessarily a critic, right? But someone who's just like
Yeah,
critical of you, and that for
yeah,
whatever reason you can't disengage with. Maybe it's like a boss or it's like a family member. It's normally something structural within like a job, or it's like a long-term friend that you just have a lot of history with, or it's like a family member.
yeah.
I guess I'll start it off by saying, first of all, it's not easy. So like
No,
everything
it's
we're about
not.
to just to say here is not going to be, a quick three-step solution. Although it is kind of like that. It's like very simple, but it's not going to be very, it might not be the easiest thing. So obviously have compassion for yourself while you're doing this. Um, but also realizing that the other person 9 times out of 10 is not doing it out of pure maliciousness.
Yeah.
I think that's very important to hold, because it makes it easier for you to not have an antagonistic relationship with them. But what's coming up for you?
Well, it brings me into just the third class of shadow, which is projection.
Ah, yeah.
And actually, often if someone says something that they may be mean, they may actually be kind of objectively a dickhead,
Yeah.
right? But them saying you're bad, you're this,
Doesn't
and you
have the
feel
meaning.
that real sensation,
Yeah.
it's often because there's a not necessarily part of you, but there could be an introjected experience of that being true,
Mm.
right? Some version of that.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's kind of getting through. Whereas if, and there's two parts to this. There's the introjected aspect, and then the authority we may have given them, which is the projection part, right? Because if a toddler said that, it would have less impact because often we're not giving a toddler authority, right? And so a part of it can be giving back the introject to where we may have taken it on. Let's say we felt a shame around our intelligence for some reason.
Mm.
And we gave that back and we re-owned for security in our own intelligence. But we may still have to re-own the authority that we may have given to teachers or to bosses or to a family member, a parent, and actually re-own the security that or the energy that was put out there as well. And often it happens as we do the introject work, it both happens simultaneously.
Mm.
But then what tends to happen is we're probably seeing the boss accurately. We don't even see them as the boss because often that puts them above.
Mm,
They have more power. We put a lot of our golden shadow onto them.
mm,
We re-own them. Realize, yeah, they may have a more senior position in this place, but that meaning is dropped away.
yeah.
If there's a horizontal experience, and you realize you'll be able to see them much more human.
Mm,
And then when they're saying things that aren't pleasant or nice, you'll be able to see, oh, okay, it's not even that you'll go, oh, that doesn't matter. It's just it won't even affect you,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And and it will more be like that's kind of a weird thing for them to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
And
might
then
even,
please.
I was going to say, you might even still, you're still going to have the awareness, but you have to navigate in a certain way
Yeah.
systematically to fit in and still allow yourself to progress in your career.
Hmm.
But you'll most likely internally, if you've done the right work, feel very secure and comfortable,
Yeah.
and they won't feel like they're bigger than
Yeah.
you or they have any authority.
Hmm. And from that security and comfortability, if it is necessary to set a boundary, which it will be, and just because someone's your boss doesn't mean that you can't, right?
Yeah,
Then it's just much easier. Because if you're not rising to their level or lowering yourself to their level, rather, and you're just saying, this is what's coming up for me, right? Like, and this is what I'm seeing you doing, and you hold that security and comfortability, what happens most of the time is they get uncomfortable and they try and bait you. The reason why people try and bait you is because when you get more reactive, you become more vulnerable, right? Because if
yeah,
you're not very reactive and they're reactive, everyone inherently senses that imbalance of a power dynamic, actually. The person who's
yeah,
overreactive and being reactive is the one with less power, actually. It just seems the reason why they're getting reactive is because they have to overcompensate for that fact. So they have to seem really aggressive or seem really like in that mode. But if you just remain like a rock there, there's no purchase for them to hold on to it, right? Which gives them a few different options. Either they chill out or they don't chill out, right? If they chill out, great. If they don't chill out, great as well. Because then to everybody else, they are now seen as the unreasonable one.
yeah,
And they can't justify it. It's very hard to justify that, you know? And over repeated exposure, what that does is it trains them to associate you with somebody who cannot be phased, which is like
absolutely.
to somebody who's acting in a more egocentric paradigm or narcissistic or plays that power dynamic, that's like death to them.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
makes them more compliant over the long time horizon. It makes them more like they just don't engage in it. Now, obviously, if there's office politics, you kind of have to play the game a little bit, right? That's just the life that you chose. So that's kind of what you have to do. And we can't get, I mean, it's too specific to really get into like how you would actually do that. But if you have that
yeah,
security and comfortability, then everything just flows better.
yeah, absolutely. The only thing I'd add,
Yeah.
and you kind of touched on it with office politics,
Hmm.
part of projection work is also re-owning the power where you don't have power,
Mm.
and seeing it accurately. That there will be some systems where there's just a domineering human
And the
who's
system
taking
is
control.
set up to protect that domineering
Yeah.
individual. Yeah.
So you might have to exit that place.
Yeah.
You might have to figure out a way to work with that
Yeah.
where you can actually appease the domineering human to kind of go around
Yeah.
a little bit, like you kind of play into their narcissism a little bit.
Mm.
And all of this, when we do the real inner work, the projection work at first, right? You're actually releasing the introject and you're re-owning the power. You can do that with a tremendous amount of power.
Yeah.
We're just not, this is where we're having healthy non-delusion. We're not moving into, we have real deep internal power. It
Mm.
means every external scenario we have external power because we don't,
Yeah.
it's not always. And sometimes the internal power is realizing that I can feel completely secure within myself.
Mm.
And I might have to maneuver around this person in a specific way
Yeah.
because that's what the system requires in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can re-own as many projections as you want, but if you're in the Soviet Union, and you speak out, you go into the good,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of
Yeah.
it's the same
Exactly.
thing. It's like
Absolutely.
because actually, by if you were to take that really obvious example to your point around the Soviet Union, if you don't re-own the fact that you actually are not powerful, then it just creates like so much frustration and anger and disturbance because you have this delusion that you feel like, oh, like no one can tell me what to do. But there is actually the secret police listening to you.
Yeah.
That when you're like, oh, no, this is actually the reality, then you get more in touch with yourself and your own empowerment. And it just makes the experience feel, okay, but what can I handle then? What can I change? What difference can I make? Rather than grasping at a fantasy which isn't realistic.
Yeah. And all that same power, because it's actually seeing, it's not seeing it's just seeing in that moment, I don't have a physical power.
Yeah.
But breaking away from trying that, all that energy then goes into the creativity of
Yeah.
where can I have leverage and
Of finding the
influence?
solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. That's all from me.
Or for me too.
Okay. We will see you on the next one. Take care.